So this is what we're going to be building today. All right, we're going to be building this guy. So as you can see, it's kind of like Ninja Gold, but instead of the one that you guys did, we're going to do one with custom cells, and there's going to be a button inside of each of the cells that when I click on, it's going to add the total amount of gold to the top. Right? So it's very similar to binary counter, where there's custom cells, and then when I click on it, you're going to add some stuff to the view controller. Right? We're going to touch on delegates, we're going to touch on custom cells, we're going to touch on custom classes, right? And MVC, right? So let's get started. Make a single view application. Just call it Ninja Gold 2. Not using core data, right? It's gonna go ahead and try to make this a little bigger so you can see it. I'm gonna make a new font because this one is just too big. I think we don't have enough room there. So we're gonna make a new font. It's gonna be, we're gonna duplicate this guy. Small. There we go. Is that good? You guys see it? All right, so first thing I'm going to do, right? First things first, we're going to make this a custom class. Main view controller. We're going to change this up here, also this file. Main view controller. Let's go to our storyboard. We're going to make this guy main view controller class, right? So now this file is corresponding to this scene here in our storyboard, right? So what are we going to need in our storyboard? We're going to need a label, right, to show this gold thing on top here. And then we're going to need a table view, right? So let's go ahead and make that. We're going to need a view, or let's see. Yeah, I guess we can make this a view. And then in the view, we can have this label in here. Or we can just make this whole thing a label. We don't even need a view. Let's just make it a label. All right. We're going to use the little blue guidelines here. All right. Eight. Let's make this 8. And then we're going to give you a height of, let's say, 60. All right, so for this label, let's give this guy a background color so we can see it. Light gray. And then we're going to center you. And we're going to give this guy a special font, right? So the way you would do that is you go to Fonts, go to Custom, and I like to use this one, right? Futura, I think that's how it's called. But there we go. Here, we're going to have our total gold and then a number. Right? So for now, just give it some dummy data. There we go. All right. So unfortunately, there is no way of changing just the color of that to orange. If you wanted to do it, you would have to make a different label. But for now, for this demo purposes, we're just going to keep it all black. All right. So we have our label here. It looks like we have all the constraints ready. The only thing we need here is now a table view. All right. So we're going to make a table view, drag it on, and then we're going to position it. All right, there we go. going to be 22 from this label that I made. Right? Cool. Everything looks good. So we just created that, so we're going to make the outlets over here. Right? So when I make projects, I like to have well-documented code. So we're going to create a mark here. We're going to call this outlets. All right, make it so that we can see this mark. And then we can go to our main view controller, and then just drag over the things that we want to make outlets for. All right, so this guy, we're going to call this guy total gold label. Right, and then the table view, we could drag a label over here, for the table view. Just call it my table view. Cool. So we have all of the elements that we need right now. What we want to do is, for the table view, I know I'm going to have some dynamic cells, right? So we're going to create one prototype cell. We're going to click on the cell. We're going to give it a reuse identifier. Just call it my cell, like that. And we can make it, a little wider. All right. So in this cell, this guy is going to be a custom cell, right? So if we're going to go and make a custom cell, we're going to go ahead and make that custom cell class, right? So over here, click on that, Command N, Cocoa Touch class. We're going to make a class called building cell, because it's Ninja Gold, right? So we have buildings, and it's a subclass of UI table view cell. UI table view cell. All right, we'll click next. It's going to go ahead and make that for us, right? So we have this file now. Building cell table view cell. Well, that doesn't look good. We're just going to call it building cell. For some reason, when you create a new Cocoa Touch class, it just adds the extension to the end. But we're going to get rid of that, so we're just going to call it building cell. We know it's a table view cell, right? Over here, we're going to do that as well. Building cell. There we go. So once we have that, we can go back to our main storyboard, click on the cell, and set its custom class to building cell. So this guy is now a building cell. Now, what do we have inside of the cell? We have this image. We have, this is like a static label, right? This doesn't change. There's a button here, and then there's a click count, right? Click count will be another label. So we got an image, label, button, label, like that. All right, so inside of each cell, we're going to drag in image. It's going to be inside of the content view, right? We're going to position it using the blue lines. And then we're going to give it some constraints. We're going to say, hey, 0, 8, 0, and then we're going to give you the aspect ratio. All right, we're going to make you square. So I'm going to make it square. There we go. Got our image view. Now we just need two labels and a button. Right? So we got label here. Right? We're going to give it some constraints like that. And then we're just going to have another label down here to just say gold. Right? So we're going to give it some constraints. And this one, it's gold. This is the amount. Okay, so this guy's going to change. This one's never going to change. So we're going to have a button over here, the go button. Right, let's give it some constraints. Give it a width, a height. We're going to give you background color so we can see it. Let's say trailing space 12, and then top space be 8. There we go. And then we're going to make our final label. We're going to put it right under the button here. Right, and this guy's the click count. So we're going to give you, some constraints there. Let's say that trailing space is equal to 10 or 12. Or you know what? We can just get rid of the trailing space and say, hey, you are going to be vertically aligned. The trailing. Oops. There we go. So these guys are matched up. And you are going to be text aligned to the left. All right, so this guy is going to be click count. All right, so we have our custom cell. We have all of our labels in here. What we want to do is we want to make some outlets and actions for these things, right? And because we made this building class, building cell class, this is where we want to connect the stuff inside of the cell too. Right, so I'm just going to close these two so we can see more stuff. So inside of the building cell, we have some outlets. And we have here in the content view, we have an image. This guy's going to change. So we're going to say this is called a building image. There's this amount here. So we're going to say amount label. Gold doesn't change. We don't need an outlet for that. Button. This is going to be called the go button. And then we have this click count. So we're just going to call it count label. All right, so we have all of our outlets ready. Now, inside of our building cell, we're going to assign it some data. But before we do that, we're going to have to create some of the data, right? So we're going to need a custom class to hold on to all of this data, right? We could, originally we just had an array with some strings in it, right? Now we're going to have an array of a bunch of objects in it. And each of the objects are going to represent each of the buildings, right? So each of these guys are getting their data from that array. That array needs to have 4 objects. An object is going to be a building object that we're going to make a custom class for, right? And in that class, we're going to have an image. We're going to have this string here. And that's all we need, right? That's all the data that the cell needs to get started. Well, the count will just be 0 when it starts, right? So I have all the images here, but before we do that, we're going to go and make our custom class. So, last week when we did, all of the Swift basics and the syntax stuff and the object-oriented programming, reviews, you guys built your own deck of cards, you build your own animals. We're just going to do that for our buildings, right? So we're going to go ahead and create a new file. We're going to make it a Swift file, and we're going to call it building. All right, we're going to create it. Go over here. Let's see, UI kit.
What does that do? I need to put foundation.
Okay, well, here. Let me show you what the difference is. So I'm not going to change the UI kit. We'll just leave it as foundation, and then later on we're going to run into an error that we'll see why, how to fix it using this change up here. So we're going to make a class. We're going to say, hey, this class is called building. All right. In the building, we have the image. We're just going to call this, img. You are a UI image. All right. We know that this is a class, but why? How come it's not auto-completing for me? Right? It's because using Foundation, you don't get those UI things. But now I can do it if I import UI kit. Right? So anything with the UI in front of it, those are things that the UI kit gives you. Foundation, it gives you like the foundation, the minimum requirements to build this class. But if you're going to do anything with the UI, like a UI image, then you're going to need UI kit. Right?
Does UI kit also include stuff that Foundation has? Or?
Yes. So the question was, does UIKit include foundational stuff? Yes, it does. So the UIKit is a beefier version of Foundation that not only gives you Foundation but also UI stuff, right? So that's why we don't have to import Foundation and then UIKit, right? So this guy's going to be optional right now. Say var. What else do we need? Amount, right? So those are the only two things. This is a string, right? We're going to initialize this class, and we're going to say, hey, we're going to pass in image UI image, and also we're going to pass in the amount UR string. All right, and in here we're going to do self dot img equals to img self dot amount equals to amount. Right? So now our class is declared. We can create this custom object now, this custom type, right? That's called building. So now in our main view controller, these are the outlets. Let's go ahead and create some global variables. Let's make this a mark as well. All right, so we've got some global variables now, and this is the array. This is the building array, and we're going to set it equal to an array of building objects, right, that we just created. So now this guy, when it initializes, it's just going to be an empty array. But as long as we tell it, hey, you're going to be holding on to building objects, then it's fine. Like, this will initialize it to become empty when it starts. Right? So I'm not making that optional. Now what I want to do though, when I initialize this code, this array is going to be empty. So what I want to do in the view did load here is I want to, fill up the array so that it has those 4 objects in it, right? And how do I fill arrays? Building array dot append, right? New element. What is the new element going to be? It's going to be a new building object that I just make, right? So how do I make a new building object? Building, right? And I have to tell it what the image is, right? So here we're going to say we're gonna say the UI image is a UI image dot wait, what is this? Okay, so this is one of the syntax things that I have to look up. All right. But I have it with me here. So it's gonna be it's gonna be like this. UI image parentheses, and it's gonna be UI image named and then we're going to give it a name like that, right? So this one, let's say it's going to be house, and then the string is going to be one. What was the house one? All right, 1 to 5. So the string is +1 to 5, like that. All right. So what is this? There we go. We have to unwrap that. There we go. Okay. So right now I'm telling it, I'm adding this new building object that I created, right? And I'm saying that, hey, for this image, you are image named house. But right now, there is no image named house. So over here, I have these assets already, there. The way you add it into your project is you click on the assets, and then you simply just highlight the photos and drag it into the side here. You let go, boom, there you go. You have your UI image called the house. You have UI image called farm, cave, and then casino. Right? So in our main view controller, this will now go into the assets and get the one with that name. right? So going back to our main view controller, we're just going to do this again 3 other times so we get those 4 objects, right? But each time we're going to do a different one. So we got house, farm, cave, casino. Farm, cave, casino. And then for the farm, it's going to be 10 to 20. The casino, or the cave, 25 to 50. And then for the casino, I believe it's plus or minus 10%, right, to make it interesting. Plus or minus 10%. All right? So we have filled up this array. As soon as the view loads, we're going to append these 4 buildings inside of this array. All right? So then, when we have our table view, we can fill up each cell as the cells generate. Right? So in order to have this table view work, what am I going to need? Delegate and data source, right? Table view 101. We're going to need to connect delegate and data source, and then over here in our main view controller, we're going to have to make you a UI table view controller. UI table view delegate, UI table view data source. Right? Once we have that, it's going to yell at me saying that I'm not implementing those functions. So we're going to say over here, table view methods. All right? So for our table view methods, the 2 that I need is going to be number of rows in section, and I'm going to return whatever the array count is, building array.count. Right? The next one that I need is going to be cell for row at index path. This one. Right? So here we're going to say let cell equals to my table view dot dq reusable cell for the cell my cell for index path of index path. Okay, and because it's a custom cell, we're gonna downcast it as a building cell. Right? The reason why we're gonna do that is because if we do it, then let's say we're gonna return the cell at the bottom here so it doesn't yell at me. Okay, so now that I've DQ'd the cell, DQ the custom cell, we're going to set the model, right?
Andy,
Yeah.
Can you explain what that what's it called, downcasting?
Right. So if you're going to DQ a cell, by default, it's just going to give you just a normal UI table view cell. But because in our main storyboard, for this table view cell, right, it's a building cell. It's a more specific type of cell. It's a custom cell. So when we're DQing it, we're going to cast it as that custom type. Because if we don't, then we don't get the properties that we defined inside of our custom cell over here, right? So if we declare it as a building cell, we can go like this, dot, and look at that. It just auto-completed with all the stuff, all of the labels and the variables that I created. If I don't do this, and I go cell dot, it's not going to give me any of that, right? So because we're using custom cells, we're going to cast it as a more specific type of cell, right? That's the whole idea of custom cells, to make it more specific, right? So for this cell though, the way that you guys have been doing it before is going like, hey, count label, you're equal to something. Building image, you're equal to something, like right here, right? So that was before we started, that was the analogy of me going into your pockets and telling you what to do, right? So instead of doing that, we're going to set a custom, what's called a getter and a setter, right? And this is something that, is the proper way to do MVC using private variables, right? So in the building cell over here, let's create another mark here called model, right? And over here, we're going to say, I have a private variable. I'm going to call it underscore model, like that. And you are of type building, right? So the cell will have a private variable, and you are of that type, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a getter and setter for this model. Okay, so the way you do that is you make a normal variable. Normal variables are visible to anybody outside. Private variables are not, right? So this variable is going to be called model without the underscore. You are also of type building. And for this guy, I'm going to create a getter and a setter, right? So the setter is going to be underscore model equals to new value. And notice that when I typed in new value, it auto-completed. So this is something that it's built into Swift, right? And I'll explain this more just in a minute here, but let me finish writing this up. So I'm going to set this guy to whatever the new value is, and then I'm going to do some stuff, right? But before I do some stuff, I'm going to create a getter. And the getter is simply, I'm going to return the underscore model, right? And the model is an optional. There we go. Right? So before I get into more clarification of what the new value is, I'm just going to create a function here called doStuff. And I'm going to call this function after I've set my model. All right, so here we're just going to say print doing stuff. Okay. Now, let's see. Okay, so for the getter and the setter. So what I'm doing here is that I have this private variable that holds on to my sensitive data, right? And the way I can set this, I can give it some data, is by using the setter we have right here, right? For the setter, we have this special keyword called new value. So whatever it is that is passed in, that's going to be saved in this new value variable here, and we're going to set that equal to, we're going to set our underscore model equal to that thing that was passed in. Now, how do I pass in stuff to this setter? Right? We're going to go to this part in our main view controller. As soon as we dequeue the cell, and it's a building cell, we can go cell dot and see everything that's available to us. Right? Notice that we have this thing called model that's available to us, but we don't have the underscore model because that's a private variable. But this guy is the one with the getter and the setter. So to set it, you simply do the equal sign. Right? You set that to whatever data you want to give it. In this case, it's going to be the building array at indexPath.row. That's going to be the building object from that array. And the equal signs, whatever is after the equal signs for a getter and a setter variable, that means you're setting it. Right? So whatever is here is now going to be in this new value keyword, and we're setting our underscore model to that thing. Right? And the getter is simply, if we do something like, print cell.model, we're accessing the data and not setting it, so therefore it's going to run whatever is in the getter method. Now, for like what we're doing here, we're just literally just returning this private object, right? But in the real world, you can say, because we have this piece of code that we can execute, now we can say, hey, if you're the admin, then we're going to give you everything. If you are not the admin, we're only going to give you pieces of things. Or say, for example, if your account is private, we're only going to give you the name of this guy. If the account is public, then we're going to give you him, his name, and all of the info. So then you have control over what you disclose, right? Very similar to the analogy in the beginning where, I ask you for your address and maybe you give me a PO box because you don't trust me or something, right? So, but the idea is that you have the control now. The actual cell, the custom cell itself, holds on to its own private data, and then it can decide to give it to you or not, right? Because this is not visible from here, right? The only thing that's visible is cell.model, but when we try to access that, we're accessing the getter for that, right? So then you can write some different kinds of if statements to see if you want to give some info or not, right? So you have more control. So MVC, this is the correct way of doing it. And also, why did I have this do stuff function here? The reason is because once we give it the data, it's going to take its own data and then do stuff with its labels, right? So that's why we're doing stuff in the cell. The cell is responsible for changing its own things. The view controller is responsible for just loading the cell. Then give it some data because it's a delegate in the data source, right? Data source gives you data. The cell itself will use that data to do stuff to it, right? So it's like a separation of concerns, right? So over here, let's see. I think that I think we made a mistake early on. All right. So what we want to do here is not necessarily give it the amount, but we want to tell it what the name is, right? So depending on the name, we're gonna set this amount, right? So we called it amount. Let's see if we can change that. So inside of the building class, we're going to call this guy name. All right, so self.name equals to name. All right, so everything's good here. When we create this object, we're going to say we're giving you a name right? And then we're going to give you the name. House, farm, cave, casino, like that, right? So now when we set the model, as soon as we do that, this custom cell is going to have all the info that it needs from this building class. So the info that it has is this image and also the name. Right, so inside of our custom cell, doing stuff, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the image, right, to whatever the image was that was passed in. So over here we have the building image UI image view. So we're going to say building image.image is equals to whatever it is the underscore model.img is. All right, so automatically it's going to set that image of whatever the image was passed in. The next part is a little bit tricky. It's going to be setting the labels. Right? We're going to set the labels, but also what we're going to do is we're going to say for each, we're going to make a variable here called count because I need to know that data. Right? So, or let's do this. Yeah, let's do this. We don't need a variable, but in our building class, we can have another variable called count, like that. And we're going to set it to be equal to 0 when we start, so that we don't have to do this in the init, but rather every time a new building instance is created, we automatically generate a variable called count. We just set it to 0. Right? So over here now, inside of our custom cell, we're going to have a underscore model dot count, right? The first thing that showed up over here. This guy's going to be 0 in the beginning, but we're going to display the count number on this count label, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say count label.text. You are going to be equals to, what is it? Click count, right? Click count, and then we're going to put the variable in here, which is the underscore model dot count. Right? It's telling me I need to unwrap this. Okay. Cool. Let's take a look at what we have so far. If we run this, do you think it'll run? Will it work? Do you think it'll work?
No.
Why not?
I don't know. Because you asked.
Because you asked.
Hey, look at that. Optional, right? We don't want to have optional in there, so we're going to unwrap it like that. Now let's run it. And also, I'm going to, what's this? There we go. There.
I don't know which image or what you wrote there.
It knows which image because in my main view controller, I'm setting those 4 images, and then depending on which element in the array it is, it's going to give it that different image. So the cell has the whole building object saved in its model
Where are the images in the file structure? Assets.
over here.
Where are they named over there?
They're just named whatever it is that I call it over here. I can change the name if I click on it like
Is
that.
that the file name or some kind of identifier?
It's gonna just take whatever is before the extension that you give it. And you can change that later on. All right, so let's see. How can we get rid of this weird optional kind of thing? Right? Let's make a constant. Let's or even better, let's safe unwrap it. Right? If let I equals to, or it's the count, right? So if that C equals to underscore model dot count, then we're going to be setting this guy. C. All right, let's run this. Yeah, click count 0. There we go. It looks like we have an extra one of those guys. Also, we can go over here and just make this a little bigger. All right, there we go. So it looks like if I make it bigger, then this thing is going to be, the image is going to be bigger. Right? So let's take a look at that. Yeah, well, that works, right? It's a table view. We got everything that we need here. The thing we need to do now is just set the labels, set this click count, right, as we click on the button, and then we need to write a delegate so that when we click on the button, we update this total gold, right? So we're going to need a bunch of if statements here, right? So we're setting the label. So over here, we're going to say if underscore model dot name is equals to, what is it, house. Whoa, look at that. What? If it's equal to the house, we are going to have variable over here that is, we're going to call this the amount, right? And this guy is a string, It's optional. All right, so we're going to say, hey, if your house, the amount is going to be +1 to 5. Right? And also, we want to have, let's say, well, we can worry about that later. But we're going to set these labels first. All right, so if the model name is house, we're going to do that. And let's go ahead and print a house. All right, else if the underscore model.name is we're going to say I'm a farm, and then it's going to be 10 to 20. And then we're going to do this again 2 more times. This one is cave. It's going to be 25 to 50. And then the last one is, there's no last one. It's got to be the casino, right? Else, I know I'm a casino. So then we're going to do plus or minus 10%, like that. All right, so once we get through this chain of if conditions over here, we can go ahead and set our label to whatever the amount is. So amount label dot text equals to the amount. Right, so we're just setting that. Let's take a look. Look at that. We have all of the correct amounts here listed in each cell. Right? And I'm doing stuff, and I'm in the house. And each of these are printed out from a separate custom cell. Okay, so now that we have this, the thing that we need to do now is that when we click on the button, it's going to increment the click count. So let's go ahead and do that first. Right? So we have a go button outlet, but what we really need is the go button action, right? So we're going to create the action. Go button. We're going to make an action. We're going to say handle go button clicked. The type is going to be UI button. And then when we click on the button in each of the cells, it's going to trigger this handle go button clicked. Right? So the first thing I want to do is I want to set underscore model dot count to be equals to or plus equal 1, right? And then I want to reset this count label, right? We're setting the count label again. All right, so let's take a look. If it does that, if it updates the count every time we click on it. Just doing this one step at a time. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. And each cell will update its own model, right? So each cell is in charge of its own, kind of functionality there, right? So the only piece that we're missing now is that when we click on some button, it's gonna, depending on what cell it is, we're gonna change the total gold to reflect that amount, right? So it looks like we're gonna have, Okay, let's do this. So every time we click on the go button, we're going to have to generate some kind of range, right? For the min and the max, for the random thing. So let's create a variable called min, right? And you are going to be equal to 0 just to start. Create another variable called max. You're going to be equal to 0 when we start. And then we're going to do this check again, right? Since we already did this big chain of checks, depending on which one it is, what the name is, we're going to have a different min and the max, right? So if the cell is the house cell, we're going to set the min equals to, what is it?
5.
1 to 5, right? So we're going to have to set the min to 1, the max to be 6, because of how the random works in iOS, right? So for each of these guys, we're going to have a different kind of min and max, right? So for this one, it's going to be 10 to 21. That'll give me something from 10 to 11, or 10 to 20, right? This one is going to be from 25 to 50. And then the last one is going to be a casino, right? In that case, I just want a random number between two things, 0 and 1, right? So I'm going to say it's going to be 0, from 0 to 2, right? Or this one is 51. Right? And I'll kind of explain in more detail about how these random work, how these random ranges work when we go ahead and create, that random number. All right. So let's say, let's over here also create this. Well, over here we can do that. We can say let rand equals to this arc for random, right? And it's going to be a uint, what is it? Or, well, let's just Google it. Random number range Swift 3. There we go. This is the one we want. There we go. So the range will go from the min, or the max, to the min, right? So we have max in here, and then min in here, and that will give us, we're just going to go ahead and print rand to see what it is, right? So let's run it. Oops. Cannot convert value type int to uint32.
Min is still a regular int.
Yeah, there we go.
It's not going to work for range.
If you want like a range from 25 to 50, you have to do like start from the min and then add whatever you need at 50.
Yeah, or random max minus min and then add the min.
There we go. It's going to be uint uint 32, and then max minus min, 2 parentheses, 3 parentheses, plus min. Yeah. Ah, okay. Oh, I see. So I can do the plus, but I have to make this an int before I can do that.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So now we can go ahead and print out our rand to see what we get. Let's move this guy. Let's move this guy over. Yeah. Good. Between 25 and 50. And then this one is just between 0 and 1. Right? So that's the 50-50 chance of whether you're going to get 10% or minus 10%. Right? There we go. Okay. So now that we have our random number generated, we need to communicate that to the view controller. Right? In order to communicate that to the view controller, I need to be able to pass it data. I can pass it data if I make it my delegate. So I can call a function on the view controller and pass in the data as the argument. Right? So we're just going to go over here and create our own custom delegate right here. Right? So we're going to name it, let's see what we called it. We called it add gold delegate. All right, so this guy is going to be a protocol. It's going to be called add gold delegate. You are going to have one function that says, hey, I'm adding gold. Inside of this add gold function, I'm going to have a parameter called amount, or I'm just call it AMT, or yeah, let's just call it amount. Amount, you are going to be integer, right? So now, when we go to our building cell, we can say, hey, in addition to this variable, you also have another variable called add gold del. We're going to set you to be the type add gold delegate, right? If we do that, then we're going to have to figure out how to set this guy. And where do I do that? I set it when I'm creating the cell. So I'm setting the model. I can also set the delegate. So I can say cell dot add gold del equal to self, right? And that will make this view controller an add gold delegate, which right now I'm not. I can't because I'm not conforming to that protocol. So I'm going to have to make it conform to that protocol, and now it's going to give me this error saying that, hey, you have to conform to implement those methods in the add gold del, which right now I'm not doing. So it's going to give me this does not conform to protocol add gold delegate, in which case I'm just going to go over here and then write that function, right? And inside of here, for now, let's just do print amount. Right? And over here in the building cell, I'm going to get rid of all these prints, this print right here, so it doesn't confuse us. But as soon as we get the random number, we have, everything we need to pass along to our view controller. So over here, because we already set the delegate, we can go over here and say add gold del dot the function that it has, right? And then we're going to pass in rand. Right? So now, once I do that, I'm going to trigger this function. And when I trigger this function, it's going to print out the amount. And this amount is important to me because I can use it now to edit my total, right? Which is going to be right here in the total. Did we even make an outlet for this guy yet? Total gold label. Yeah, we did. Right. But we're also going to need to create another variable called total. We'll just call it total. And you are an integer. And you're going to be 0 when we first start out. All right. So using this amount, now we can start to update the total. Right? So we got total is going to be plus equals to the amount. And then we're going to say total gold label dot text is going to be equals to total gold, whatever this total was. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have now. Almost there, almost done. Yeah, it's updating, right? But if I click on the casino, look at that. It's either going to be 0 or 1. That's updating that count, that number on the total, right? Which is what we don't want, to update normally if it's a casino. We want the casino, when we click this button, the view controller knows that it's a casino and will take the input of the 0 or 1 and then do the 10%, right? So in order for us to notify this view controller that, hey, you are in fact a casino that's sending you this data, we're going to have another parameter here. When we're making this delegate, we're going to say, in addition to the amount, we're also going to send you casino, right? And this guy is going to be a Boolean of yes and no, yes or no, are you a casino or not, right? So we change this, so we have to go back to our main view controller, add in that argument here, right? And also we're going to have to go to our building cell. When we invoke that function, we're going to say, whoa, are you a casino, right? And we're going to say, if you are a casino, let's set a variable here called C. We're going to set that to false. And if you are a casino, we're going to say C equal true.
We named a constant C, is that okay?
Oh, okay. Okay, let's name this something else then. Oops, there we go. So we're going to send over this variable. It's going to be false every time until it hits a case where it's a casino. That means the casino cell was clicked. And then it's going to generate that random number 1 or 0, and then we're going to pass in whatever this was, which will only be true if it was a casino. So now, in our main view controller, we can now check to say, if casino, then we can say we're going to print it's the casino, and then we're going to do our special casino calculation. If it's not, then we're going to move all of this stuff. Or, I mean, we're going to have to update this total every time, but this is the thing that will change if it's not the casino. If it's not the casino, I'm just going to take whatever amount you give me and add it to my total, and then update the text. If it is a casino, then I need to check if amount is 1, then I'm going to add money or add gold, right? So the total is going to be equals to whatever total was before times, or it's going to be total plus equals to total times 0.1, right? 10%, right? We're just adding 10% to it. Int and double. Okay, so it looks like we need to make our total a double for this to even work, right? So let's make this double. 0.0. There we go. Now we're just going to have to convert, or we don't convert anything. There we go. This guy's going to yell at me because it's an int. Is it? Build it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to convert this amount to a double before we can add it, and then it should stop yelling at me. All right, there we go. Build succeeded. So if, back to the casino, if the amount is 1, we're going to add the gold, or else we're going to take gold away. So there, we're just going to do the minus equals. All right, let's run this. And if it works, then it's done. We built it. Right, so we have gold at 0 right now. We're going to set that works, that works, that works. Yeah, this works as well. Look at that. Look, it's getting crazy now with all of these decimals, right? So we can,
Chop it off.
right, we can round it. I'm sure there's a Swift built-in method to round. Another thing we should probably do is that in the view did load, we should probably set this beginning to be the 0.0, right? And then if we run it in the beginning, it'll show the total from the beginning. There we go. All right, now this is working good. That's working as well. Let's see. Round to 2 digits, shift 3. Round up double to 2 places. Stream. There we go. So we're going to convert this double to, we're going to convert this total to a string. So let's say, or let's say total, or no, it's going to be let str equals to string format this, and this is going to be total. So now we got a string, and then we're going to set, we can do it here, right? Because we're doing it for both of them. Right, so there we go. And do this as well. Right? Oh, it's going to tell me it doesn't exist. Okay. So we move it up into here, copy that, move it up into here, and then for this one, we only want this to happen if it's the else case. All right, so now I believe it'll always round to 2 digits. So let's take a look. Yeah, there we go. Always round to 2 digits. Oop, whoa.
Let's do that.
Ah, okay.
So
Yeah, so for this one, we can do the same, right? We can say this, and then take this away.
why is that? Is the information still saved? We're just not seeing it what's rounded?
It's still the decimal,
Okay.
but we're only displaying it so that it's a
It's
string.
We weren't
Yeah.
actually changing the
Right, we weren't changing the total. So for here, we're actually, we got back to the original decimal, and then
that's
we
why
displayed the
it
decimal, yeah.
It's number to 2 floats.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what the command does.
Gotcha.
So here, if we set it to 0.00, then everything should work now. Whoa. All right, still getting 2 digits. Still getting 2 digits. Click on the other one, still 2 digits. All right. Cool. And we just finished the Ninja Gold 2.0. Right? Touched on a bunch of different subjects here. Right? We got our custom class that we built, the building class. We have our custom cell, which we wrote a lot of code in, which is good because otherwise this code would have been on the view controller, right? But now we're kind of delegating this, whatever the cell does, to the cell itself. And that's what this custom class is made for.
And you were saying that's like the MVC architecture.
Yeah.
We should be doing all that stuff.
Yep. So creating this model, this private model here, and then setting the data from the view controller will give the cell the data that it needs to do whatever it needs to do to itself, right? Whatever the cell does is the cell's own responsibility. Only the view controller responsibility is to when you dequeue the cell, you just give it the data that it needs, because this data lives on the view controller. Therefore, the view controller is the only one that can give the cell the data. Right? It's a data source. So once the data source gives you the data, then its job is done. The cell can do whatever it needs to do with its own outlets and variables and stuff. Right? So instead of doing everything here, we had the cell take care of it. Right? Using the syntax that we did with the getter and the setter, and we created even a private variable here so that it's very secure and you can't find all of the data unless you give it out, of course. But over here, I can totally say, hey, like return false, right? So that if you're trying to get that, you're not getting my data, right?
What's that private do again?
So the private variables are not visible within, outside classes. So if I say cell dot, I don't see an underscore model here because it's private, right? But I do see the not private version. And if I try to access it, all that's going to do is going to give me whatever the getter sends me. And I can totally tell the getter to return, nope. Right? So now, check this out. If I do this,
Oh, it's expression.
It's gonna be inside
It wants a building object.
oh,
back.
it wants a building type object back.
You tell it to return a string instead. I think that's the way you should set it up. Because our model is a building instead of
okay.
class.
Right. Well, I mean, can we just not return it?
You just name it something really different.
Missing returning function expected to return building. Well, maybe we can do this. Oops. We'll just say, we have to give it some kind of UI image. So we could create like a dummy UI image, I guess, and give it that. Right?
Oh, you told that.
Yeah, so when it loads, there you go. Ninja Gold 2 building, dot building. So it's a building object. Right? So if I wanted to go over here and print cell.model.name, then it doesn't have to be the actual model's name, but it's just whatever I want to pass it in, pass you, So nope. Right? So even though the model is holding on to the real data that this building has, I can choose to return something else. Right? So not necessarily reveal all of my stuff. Right? But that's just like the kind of the MVC way of doing it. So with that said, I think we have it. Everything's good to go. I'm gonna stop the video now.